You walk into a room and people light up, not because you demand attention, but because something about your presence feels easy, safe, warm. You've built a life around being the person others want to be near, and for a long time you believed that was enough. But somewhere beneath the smiling exterior, there's a question you can't quite silence. If they really knew you, would they still stay? This isn't about insecurity in the way most people understand it, it's about something quieter, more structural. You've become so skilled at radiating positivity and charm that you've lost access to the parts of yourself that don't fit that image. And the people drawn to you, the ones who call you magnetic, who say you make everything better, they're not falling in love with you, they're falling in love with how you make them feel about themselves. Therapists consistently observe a particular pattern in clients who present as highly attractive with effortlessly positive social energy. These individuals often report feeling deeply lonely despite being surrounded by admirers. They describe a chronic sense of being misunderstood, even by people who claim to know them well. And when relationships end, there's often confusion on both sides. The partner feels blindsided, saying they never saw it coming, and you feel exhausted, like you've been performing a role you never auditioned for. The paradox is this: the very traits that draw people to you, the warmth, the optimism, the ability to make others feel seen, these same traits prevent anyone from actually seeing you. Because when you've learned to regulate not just your own emotions, but the emotional atmosphere of every room you enter, you stop having access to your own inner experience. You become a mirror, and mirrors don't have needs. This pattern doesn't begin in adulthood, it begins in childhood, in homes where emotional stability was inconsistent or where love felt conditional on your ability to be pleasant, agreeable, unthreatening. Attachment research shows that children who grow up managing a parent's emotional state, becoming the easy child, the bright spot, the one who doesn't add to the chaos, often develop what looks like secure attachment on the surface. They're socially adept, emotionally intelligent, good at reading rooms and adjusting their energy to match what's needed. But beneath that adaptation is a wound. The wound of never being allowed to be difficult, of learning that your value lies in your ability to soothe others, not in your right to exist as a full, complex, sometimes messy human being. You learned early that being wanted and being known are not the same thing, and you made a choice, unconscious at the time, to prioritize being wanted, because being known felt too dangerous. The people who pursue you now are not looking for emotional depth, they're looking for relief. Relief from their own inner chaos, their own insecurity, their own fear that they're not enough. And you provide that relief so effortlessly that they mistake it for love. They tell you you're perfect. They tell you you're everything they've been looking for. And part of you knows it's a lie. But another part, the part that still carries that childhood wound, feels momentarily soothed by the validation. Here's what nobody tells you about being attractive with positive vibes. Every connection you form is built on a foundation of concealment. Not intentional dishonesty, but a deep, structural inability to show the parts of yourself that don't align with the image others have projected onto you. Jungian psychology would call this the persona, the social mask we wear to navigate the world. But for you, the persona isn't just a mask, it's become the only version of yourself you know how to access in the presence of others. And your shadow, the disowned parts, the anger, the neediness, the fear, the disappointment, those parts don't disappear. They live in your body as chronic tension. They show up as sudden, inexplicable irritability that you quickly suppress. They emerge in relationships as a creeping resentment toward the very people who adore you, because their adoration feels like another demand to stay small, stay shiny, stay convenient. You've probably noticed a pattern in your relationships. The beginning is always easy, intoxicating even. They're drawn to your light, and you're briefly relieved by their desire, by the proof that you're still desirable. But as the relationship deepens, something shifts. They start expecting you to be available in ways that feel exhausting. They want emotional intimacy, but what they mean is they want more of what you've already been giving them. More reassurance, more positivity, more proof that you won't become difficult or demanding. And you try. You keep showing up as the version of yourself they fell for. But the effort starts to feel unsustainable. because you're not just managing your own emotional world now, you're managing theirs. You're the emotional anchor, the steady one, the person who keeps everything light and hopeful even when you're drowning inside. And the moment you falter, the moment you show frustration or need or vulnerability that doesn't come packaged in soft, digestible language, they recoil. Not always consciously, but you feel it. The subtle withdrawal, the confusion in their eyes, the unspoken question, what happened to the person I fell in love with? The answer is that person never existed, not in the way they imagine. That person was a protection mechanism, a way of ensuring you'd never be abandoned for being too much, because you made sure you were never too much. You became exactly enough, perfectly calibrated to each person's capacity. And the cost was your own emotional reality. Clinical psychology recognizes this as a form of relational self-betrayal. It's not the same as people-pleasing, though it shares some features. People-pleasers often know they're sacrificing their needs and feel resentful about it. But when you're operating from this particular wound, you've lost touch with what your needs even are. You've spent so long attenuating yourself to others that you genuinely don't know what you want outside of being wanted. Your desires have become entirely relational. You want to be chosen. You want to be seen as exceptional, but you don't want to be known, because being known means risking rejection of your actual self, not just the image. Here's where it gets darker. The more attractive and positive you are, the more people are invested in keeping you that way. Your partners don't want you to change because your stability is what makes them feel safe. Your friends don't want you to have bad days because you're the one who's supposed to make them feel better. Even strangers on the street respond to your warmth because it soothes something in them. So everyone around you, consciously or not, is reinforcing the very pattern that's suffocating you. And you can't simply stop being attractive or positive. Even if you wanted to, those traits are woven into your nervous system. They're not a performance you can drop. They're survival strategies that have calcified into personality. The smile is real, the warmth is real, but it's only one frequency of who you are, and it's the only frequency anyone ever wants to hear. Existentially, this creates a crisis of meaning. If your entire relational world is built on a version of yourself that isn't whole, what does it mean to be loved? You start to suspect that love, as you've experienced it, is just a transaction. They get to feel good, you get to feel wanted, but no one is actually meeting anyone. It's two people exchanging projections and calling it intimacy. And once you see this pattern, you can't unsee it. Every compliment starts to feel hollow. Every "I love you" lands with a silent addendum. I love the version of you that doesn't ask too much of me. The loneliness that comes from this is specific and profound. It's not the loneliness of being alone. It's the loneliness of being surrounded by people who believe they know you while you're painfully aware that they don't. It's the loneliness of never being able to fully relax, because relaxing means letting the mask slip, and letting the mask slip means risking the one thing you've spent your entire life trying to avoid, being rejected for who you actually are. Some people respond to this realization by withdrawing entirely. They decide relationships aren't worth the effort if they can't be real, so they isolate, convincing themselves they're better off alone. Others swing in the opposite direction, becoming desperate for someone, anyone, to see past the surface. They start oversharing, trauma dumping, testing people's capacity to handle their darkness. But both responses are still operating from the same wound. Both are still driven by the unconscious belief that your worth is contingent on how others experience you. The path forward isn't about becoming less attractive or less positive. It's not about rejecting the parts of yourself that others respond to. It's about developing the capacity to hold your full emotional range without needing permission from others to do so. It's about learning that you can be warm and also angry, optimistic and also grieving, attractive and also deeply, inconveniently human. This requires a kind of relational courage most people never develop. It means you have to start disappointing people. Not cruelty or recklessness, but the willingness to say no, to express frustration, to take up space in ways that don't immediately soothe the other person. It means choosing relationships where your complexity is welcome, not just tolerated. And that means letting go of connections that only want the easy version of you, even when those connections feel like all you have. Therapists working with clients navigating this pattern often describe it as a process of reparenting. You have to become for yourself what you needed as a child but didn't receive. Permission to be difficult, permission to have needs, permission to exist in your full emotional spectrum without the constant fear of abandonment. And this work is slow because you're not just changing behavior, you're rewiring the fundamental belief that your value is located in your ability to make others comfortable. What makes this particularly challenging is that the external rewards for staying in the pattern are significant. Being attractive with positive vibes opens doors. It creates opportunities. People want to help you, hire you, be close to you. There's a seductive quality to being desired, even when you know that desire is based on a limited version of who you are. So choosing authenticity often means choosing less external validation, at least initially. It means trading quantity of connection for quality. And that trade requires you to believe, really believe, that being known is worth more than being wanted. The people who successfully navigate this transformation describe a strange paradox. As they become more willing to show their difficult emotions, their messy humanity, their unpolished edges, they often find that the right people move closer, not further away. Because real intimacy isn't built on perfection. It's built on the willingness to be seen in your imperfection and to see others in theirs. The people who only wanted the shiny version fall away, and at first that feels like loss. But gradually you realize it's not loss, it's clarity. You start to notice the difference between people who love your energy and people who love you. The former get uncomfortable when you're not performing. The latter get curious. They ask what's really going on. They don't need you to be okay all the time because they're not using you to regulate their own emotional state. And in those relationships, something new becomes possible. You start to relax. Not the performance of relaxation, but actual nervous system settling. The kind that happens when you're not constantly monitoring whether you're too much or not enough. This doesn't mean you lose your warmth through your attractiveness. It means those qualities stop being a strategy and start being a genuine expression of who you are in moments when you actually feel warm. And in moments when you don't, you have access to other parts of yourself. You become three-dimensional, unpredictable in a human way. And the people who can hold that complexity are the people worth keeping. If you've recognized yourself in this, if you felt the weight of being everyone's bright spot while drowning in your own unacknowledged darkness, know that the pattern is not your fault. You adapted to an environment that required you to be easy in order to be safe. But adaptation that once protected you can become a prison if you never update it. And you're allowed to update it. You're allowed to become inconvenient. You're allowed to be loved for more than your ability to make others feel good about themselves. The work is not about fixing yourself. You're not broken. The work is about integration. About reclaiming the parts of yourself you exiled in order to survive. About building a life where your full humanity is not just tolerated but celebrated. And that life is possible, but it requires you to stop performing and start existing. To stop managing how others feel about you and start paying attention to how you feel about yourself. To stop being a mirror and start being a person. If this resonated with you, subscribe to this channel. We explore the psychological patterns that shape how we love, how we hide, and how we slowly find our way back to ourselves. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next deep dive into the hidden dynamics of relationships and self-deception. And if you're ready to stop being everyone's safe place and start being your own, leave a comment below. Let's talk about what it really means to be both attractive and whole. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.